Hey guys, Rod here from Fish Tech Solutions. With Awoonga Dam, there's obviously a lot of focus on Awoonga Dam. We've got the ABT, Australian Open, coming up there next week. And we've seen a lot of videos coming through our Facebook feed about cast stakes, soft plastics and weedless rigs and jig heads. But plastics aren't the only way that we can catch those barra this time of year. And this time of year is a really good time because a lot of those fish that are sort of pushed into the deeper water in summer, they move into those edges and shallow water, and that not so much get easier to catch, but they're a lot more accessible because they're getting into that water where, you know, they're in sort of 3 foot, 4 foot and less of water, and it just makes them a lot more catchable because they're in there feeding. And one of the lures that I want to highlight to you today, it's a lure from IMAKATSU called an Alive Roller 2. The packaging of the lure looks like this. So IMAKATSU Gekesha Alive Roller 2. It's a shallow diving lure. It comes in a range of really good colors. You know, the Japanese obviously know what they're doing with regards to color selection. If you have a look at this one, it almost mimics, you know, a live fish. Pretty cool with the finish. Now, straight out of the box, the lure comes with light gauge. I think they're a Daiichi chemically sharpened hook, designed for largemouth bass in Japan. Now, the first thing I do is I change the hooks out on the lure. I generally don't mind VMCs, so I just throw a set of VMCs on it. Now, there's a couple of things that makes this lure a really good choice for this time of year. Firstly, it's a shallow diver, as you can see by the bib. It's got a very shallow bib, but it's also got real skinny. It's got a real skinny profile and flat sides. So the lure it's a bit hard to see on the camera there, but they come with extremely flat, flush-shaped sides. You can probably see it if you turn it upside down a bit better. Flush sides, and then it's got this bit of a hook in the top of it. And the way this lure is designed to be fished is as a jerkbait. You fish it extremely hard with short, sharp stabs of your rod tip, but it's where you can fish this lure that's the key. And this lure floats. It's a floating variety. With those lighter gauge hooks, it actually floats very fast. So I prefer the heavier hooks just to slow the float rate of this lure down. But the way this lure floats is it actually floats head up. So as soon as you twitch it, it's got an extremely erratic action. Those flat sides put out a lot of flash, a lot of vibration. And then once you pause this, it actually has a tendency to go up, float, head up, and then float to the surface. Most of the bites you get with this lure are on the pause while it's floating head up, just before it breaks the surface. The deal with this lure is you can fish it through and around weed really well because of that. If a lure floats like so, or suspends like so, the very next time you go to jerk it, it goes down again. And if you're fishing it through sparse weed, if you picture sparse weed beds, this lure's coming down, you know, it sort of hits the weed bed and then slowly starts to float. The next time you twitch that lure, it dives straight into that weed again. However, if this lure floats up head first and you twitch it, it actually works over the top of the weed like so. And being such a fine bib on it, you can actually rip the lure through the weed with that cadence. So it's a rip, it starts to float up and you can rip it back down. And if it gets any weed on those hooks, you can then rip it through the weed really well. And a lot of bites actually come when you're doing that. And that's what makes this lure so effective, and it makes it stand out above others. You can still rip it hard. It's pretty hard to blow out, and it's only running in that bottom 2 foot of water, 1.5 to 2 feet. And what we found last year, sort of September, October, and then as the warming trend started into November, is the fish would get up there, you'd cast at them with weedless plastics, you might get a tap or a bump or a boil, and then the fish would almost shut down, or they'd just be sitting in the weed waiting for a bite time or something similar. And when you came through there with an erratic action lure like the Alive Roller, really jerking it through those key areas where those fish were just holding in that weed, you'd get that instinctive aggressive bite, sort of the dog chasing the cat kind of scenario, where that plastic just paddling through that area, or or bouncing through that area, they just watch it go past. With a jerk pause with a live roller, we seem to get a lot more of a reaction bite, even if they just showed themselves. But so that's the basis of this lure. It's 10.5 centimeters. It's actually 10.5 grams as well, but it floats with the head up cadence. So you can rip it through the weed. As soon as you feel that weed, or you start to tap the weed, you can pause it and it'll float up over the top of it, and the next time you rip it, it'll work through. So you'll be able to work the live roller through that weed a lot easier than a lot of other suspend style or lures that float head down. That's the key to that lure.